There is something sitting on the ocean floor that has no business being there. It is made of stone. It is perfectly arranged. And depending on who you ask, it is either the most important archaeological discovery of the last century, or a geological quirk so bizarre that scientists still cannot agree on what caused it. You have probably never heard of it. That is not an accident. Off the southwestern coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was searching for hammerhead sharks in 1986. What he found instead changed everything, or should have. Roughly 25 meters below the surface, he encountered a massive formation of stone. Flat terraces, right-angle corners, steps ascending like a staircase, walls that dropped vertically into the seafloor, and, running along the structure, what appeared to be a road, straight, intentional, leading somewhere. He surfaced. He told people. And the debate that followed has never stopped. The structure is now known as the Yonaguni Monument. It stretches roughly 60 meters wide, 30 meters tall, and covers an area of about 45,000 square meters. That is larger than a city block. It sits at a depth that would have been dry land somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were dramatically lower than they are today. Which raises the question every researcher who has dived it eventually has to answer. Did something build this, or did nature? To understand why that question is so hard to settle, you need to understand what the two sides are actually arguing. Because this is not a debate between scientists and conspiracy theorists. It is a debate between two credentialed geologists who have both been underwater at this site and come back with completely different conclusions. And the reason they disagree tells you more about the monument than either of their answers does. The first position belongs to Masaaki Kimura, a professor of marine geology at the University of the Ryukyus who has logged more dives on the Yonaguni Monument than perhaps any other researcher alive. Kimura does not hedge. He has cataloged what he describes as more than 20 distinct features that he believes cannot be produced by natural geological processes. And when you hear the list, it is difficult not to feel the weight of it. There are what appear to be tool marks in the stone, long straight incisions that run against the natural grain of the rock. There are twin megaliths, two large standing stones positioned upright side by side, in a configuration Kimura argues is statistically impossible to achieve through random erosion. There are what he identifies as drainage channels, ditches carved at precise angles, running parallel to each other along the base of the structure, exactly where you would place them if you needed water to flow away from a flat surface. And there is a carved feature embedded in the rock face that Kimura describes as a human face, a formation with two hollowed eye sockets, a defined nose ridge, and a mouth, staring outward from the stone. Kimura's conclusion is not modest. He believes the Yonaguni Monument is the remnant of a lost civilization, a city, or at minimum a ceremonial complex, that existed when this part of the Pacific was still above water. A culture so ancient, it predates the earliest known organized settlements in the region by thousands of years. He has called it Japan's Atlantis. He has said it out loud, in print, at academic conferences, for decades. He has been largely ignored. Now consider the second position. Robert Schoch is a professor at Boston University, a geologist with a specialty in ancient stone structures, and a man who became famous and controversial in the 1990s when he argued that the Great Sphinx of Giza was thousands of years older than Egyptologists believed, based on water erosion patterns in the surrounding rock. He is not someone who reflexively dismisses unconventional ideas. He has dived the Yonaguni Monument multiple times. He has spent hours underwater examining the same features Kimura cataloged. And his conclusion is fundamentally different. Schoch believes the primary structure is natural. He points to a geological process called hydraulic stress fracturing, where water and tectonic pressure cause stone to split along clean, flat plains, producing surfaces that can look unnervingly geometric from a distance. The rock at Yonaguni is a fine-grained sandstone that splits particularly cleanly. Schoch argues that what divers are seeing is the result of millions of years of this process, combined with wave action, current erosion, and the natural tendency of certain rock types to fracture at right angles. Nature, he says, is capable of producing this. We just do not expect it to. But then Schoch says something that stops the argument cold. He does not dismiss the site entirely. He has stated, carefully and repeatedly, that while the underlying structure is likely natural, certain specific features are difficult to explain without some degree of human activity. The twin megaliths, in particular, the precision of certain channels, the sheer consistency of the terracing across the entire structure. He uses phrases like possibly modified and may have been used. He stops short of calling it a construction, but he does not call it purely natural either. Think about what that means for a moment. If Schoch is right, if this is a natural formation that humans found, recognized, and then altered, then you still have organized human activity occurring at this site more than 10,000 years ago. You still have people capable of identifying useful stone, working it deliberately, and returning to it repeatedly. The civilization implied by Schoch's cautious middle ground is nearly as extraordinary as the one implied by Kimura's bold claim. The difference is one of degree, not of kind. And here is where the debate becomes genuinely uncomfortable, because both men agree on one thing. We do not have enough data to settle this. The monument has never been formally excavated. No sediment cores have been taken from around the base of the structure to establish a depositional timeline. No tool fragments, no organic material, no artifacts of any kind have been recovered from the site in a controlled scientific context. Every argument on both sides is based on visual observation. Divers looking at rock and interpreting what they see. Kimura sees craft. Schoch sees nature with reservations. And without a proper excavation, neither can prove the other wrong. That middle ground is, in some ways, more troubling than either extreme. Because if the monument is entirely natural, it is the most improbable coincidence in geological history. A set of formations so geometrically precise, so architecturally coherent, that trained divers and engineers have repeatedly mistaken them for construction. And if it is even partially man-made, then organized human activity, capable of altering stone, existed in this region more than 10,000 years ago, long before any civilization we currently acknowledge. Yonaguni is not the only anomaly in these waters. Nearby, researchers have documented additional submerged formations. A carved circular platform, what appear to be two monoliths positioned upright side by side, and a formation that divers have called the stage, a wide flat surface surrounded by terraced walls that bears an uncomfortable resemblance to an amphitheater. None of these features have official recognition. None are protected. None are included in mainstream discussions of human prehistory. They are simply there. The ocean floor around the world is one of the least explored environments on the planet. Researchers at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution have pointed out repeatedly that we have higher resolution maps of Mars than we do of Earth's own seafloor. In many areas, we are working from data so coarse that structures the size of city blocks would not appear on our charts. The Yonaguni Monument was found by accident, by a diver looking for sharks. The question no one wants to sit with too long is simple. How many more are down there? There is a broader context here that most discussions of Yonaguni deliberately avoid. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose globally by more than 120 meters. This happened relatively quickly in geological terms. The process was underway by 12,000 years ago and largely complete by around 8,000 years ago. The land that disappeared underwater during that period was not empty. Archaeological research has consistently shown that early human populations in coastal and near-coastal regions were often the most complex, the most food secure, and the most likely to develop organized social structures. The coasts went under, and whatever was on them went with the water. Graham Hancock, a researcher and author who has spent years advocating for the study of submerged prehistoric sites, has argued that the world is systematically ignoring an entire chapter of human history. Not out of malice, but because the evidence is somewhere that is very difficult and expensive to reach. His argument is not fringe. The geophysicist Glenn Milne at the University of Ottawa has produced detailed maps of what the world's coastlines look like at various points during the Ice Age, and the habitable zones that no longer exist above water are vast. We are not talking about small strips of beach. We are talking about continental shelves, river valleys, entire lowland regions that would have been among the most desirable places for ancient humans to settle. And we have barely looked at any of them. The Yonaguni Monument sits at the intersection of everything that makes this uncomfortable. It is too organized to be easily dismissed, too old to fit neatly into what we think we know, and too difficult to access to force a definitive answer. Masaaki Kimura continued diving the site into his 70s. He documented more than 20 individual features he believes show signs of human modification. He presented his findings at scientific conferences. He was, by most accounts, largely ignored. Robert Schoch remains uncertain, and scientists who remain uncertain about things this significant tend to say so quietly. The Japanese government has not recognized the monument as a cultural heritage site. There is no official excavation, no funded research program, no international body studying what lies beneath those waters. There is only the structure itself, sitting in the dark, 25 meters down, perfectly still, waiting to be explained. When Kihachiro Aratake surfaced after that first dive in 1986, he did not yet understand what he had seen. He would go back. He would bring others. He would spend years trying to get the world to pay attention. And what he found, whatever it is still down there, exactly where he left it, exactly where it has always been, long before anyone knew to look.